Good afternoon, my friends. This is the Grim Flayer. Hope you're all doing very well today, and I hope you are going to enjoy, I think you will enjoy it, this new style of video I'm bringing you. Note that I have titled this video Deck Building and Play Testing. So this is different from the deck text that you're familiar with, where there's an archetype that I've studied extensively. I've got some good experience with it, and I am going on a deep dive into the corner case deck building decisions of said archetype. That's what my deck techs are. And my leagues, those are self-explanatory. I'm playing one league, 5 rounds, and I'm showing you it, usually live recorded, occasionally in replay form. So this is something a little bit different. And this, in fact, is a window into how I learn a new archetype. A lot of people have asked me that in the past, and you're about to find out how I do it. So here's how I do it. I ask around a little bit, maybe. I certainly asked your opinions on this channel. We're also going to take a look at your comments on the previous, from the previous video. I asked whether you want me to play Seasons Past, Abs and Midrange, or Green-Black Soulflare, or something else of your own preference in the BGX family for the Pioneer format. As you can see, we have opted for Seasons Past. Or is it Dark Seasons? We have to decide what our favored nomenclature is. Dark Seasons or Seasons Past? Let me know below. But anyway, the Seasons Past deck, here's what I opted for. And so here's how I learn it. I look at a few lists that have recently 5-0'd. I try to kind of distill the theory behind them, decide what I like and what I don't like about what they've done, but when I'm not sure, I defer to the person who has 5-0'd, especially if I don't have experience on the deck, and especially now because I haven't played Pioneer in a while. And then I take it into the tournament practice lobby for some no-stakes games that let me get a feel for the deck, let me get a few reps in. If I have the time anyway, that's what I like to do. That's exactly what I did here with this list that you're looking at, and I went 15-0 in the tournament practice lobby. Now, yes, it is only the lobby, but experienced MTGO players who have played a lot of leagues and a lot of lobby games, you know that obviously in the lobby you have a higher incidence of newer people playing, frankly, jankier decks. People are more likely to scoop early. That's all true. But at the same time, with the requisite experience, you can tell when you're against a good, experienced player playing a real deck. And the strong majority of the matches in this 15-0 run were against the latter, not the former. So I am going to show you, not all, of course, of the 15 matches, but we're going to speed through them pretty quickly, and I'm going to show you a really nice selection of this deck that I haven't lost with yet. I won a few and I was like, okay, cool, this feels really strong. I guess I'll just play until I lose. And I just haven't lost. Just stopped after 15 rounds. So obviously this is a really good sign. And yes, I went on a good run with luck, and yes, maybe I had good matchups, I don't know, and yes, it is only the lobby. But still, I think this is very, very promising. And of course, I thought Seasons Past was promising even before this, otherwise I would have not put it forth as one of my potential archetypes to sink my teeth into. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to start off by looking at the comments. I'm going to tell you why I opted for this over Abs and Midrange and Soulflare. And thank you to our newest Patreon supporter, Confidant Tier supporter Kook Zerg 23. Thank you so much, my friend, and thank you as always to all Patreon supporters who make this content possible. Okay, my friends, so like I said, we're going to take a look at your comments, and I actually just pulled open my notifications here as I was getting ready to make this segment of the video, and I see that Nick Moskwa has commented saying, hey, I'm glad to see my Golgari Seasons Past 5-0 list is getting some love. He goes on to offer to lend me cards, which is very generous. I do think I have everything I'll realistically need for Seasons Past, but I appreciate that, truly. And he says, I'd be happy to lend the cards and share a bit of what I've learned while playing the deck as well as some of its quirks. So, Nick, consider this an open invitation in the comments below, my friend, to share everything that you've learned. I think the 5-0 that I, presumably the one that is most recent, is the one that I featured in this video. that we're reading the comments from now. It's also the one that I modeled my list off of. So that must be Nick's list. Congrats on your 5-0, man, and yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So let it rip in the comments. Everyone keep an eye out for Nick's insights here. But we're just going to quickly, I'm just going to scroll through these. And yes, I did pin the comment about rhino mating sounds because it was very funny. And that maybe led everyone to believe I was going to do Abzin, and for a while I thought it was, but I'll show you why. So we've got a lot of great commenters, a lot of awesome people voting for Abzin. So there's a lot of love for the idea of Abzin. And Mark with, I believe, the only vote for the Soul Flayer deck, so shout out to Mark. Keeping Soul Flayer's morale up high, but most people don't want to see this, so we'll put that one on the back burner for now. One of the reasons I'm opting for Seasons Past is because of comments like this. I did receive a certain amount of pushback almost. People questioning whether the White Splash is that much better than the Rock. You know, we do have a lot of great 4-drop alternatives to Siege Rhino that don't do the same thing, but are maybe of similar power level, like Questing Beast, and even some other stuff. You know, Night Pack Ambusher is something somebody brought up if we just want creatures, but of course, Kalidas is great as well. Vraska Golgari Queen's there, so do we really need the White Splash is an open question. Then we had some other cool alternatives, you know, Jund definitely looks more promising than I thought it would based on a deck like this. And again, lots of love for Abzin, but then we see Dark Seasons, Seasons Past, another vote for Jund, Seasons Past, Green-Black Seasons. Abzin would be great. So it's definitely kind of 50-50, but I opted in the end for the deck because the comments about Abzin's White Splash being not necessarily like overtly awesome, and going back to what I said about having the inevitability in the previous video of the top end of Dark Seasons, plus the fact that we get to stick to 2-color green-black rock, Dark Seasons, that's what I'm going for, at least for the moment. Okay, so I'm going to run through a super quick just overview of the deck. We are on 25 lands with my particular build, which again is kind of a spin-off of the most recent 5-0. Just from memory, I added a 4th Abrupt Decay because it's just all about interacting, all about staying alive until you can get your recursive value online, usually through looping Dark Petition with Seasons Past, or just resolving a Seasons Past in general, but there are also certainly other ways to take over the game. We're going to let my client catch up here. Definitely don't want to lose it here, but the other major change that I made, there we go, little laggy today. I saw Tireless Tracker kind of in and out of decks, sometimes in sideboards. I did decide that I kind of like playing 2 Tireless Trackers main, just for more value, just for a different angle that the opponent also has to be able to handle, and just a really good fit when you're on this many lands anyway. And then other pieces of tech I borrowed from other lists include Vraska Relic Seeker here, which is particularly appealing just because her ultimate is, a very, very value-oriented planeswalker in general. But the ultimate putting the opponent down to 1 life, and then we're able to win with like a Hissing Quagmire attack or something. Things like this, they did appeal to me, so these were things I wanted to try out. I also added, I believe, Blight Beetle to the side, Scavenging Ooze to the side, and maybe we're not supposed to play those Hateberry type of things, but I did want to test them out. And a couple copies of Duress, I believe, is nice. I haven't seen this, actually, in too many of the Seasons Past list, but I do like being able to bring them in against combo and control, without question. 3 Temple of Malady, 3 Hissing Quagmire, 1 Field, 1 Urborg. Just a couple Fabled Passages won't really hamper our development too much, but they are nice with Tracker, and they're nice with Seasons Pass because you can buy them back. So just made a couple changes, really, and we're going to jump right into some games. Alright, guys, so we are on the play with a classic hand. 4 lands, 3 spells is pretty common here. We've just got good universalized interaction, and we've got a Dark Petition, which is going to be kind of part of our combo, if you will. Opponent goes Spire, Bluff, Canal, Long Tusk, Cub, so there's some kind of an energy deck, maybe one with an aggressive slant, and we're continuing to draw removal, so that's pretty cool. Opponent with a Rogue Refiner. This one, it feels a little bit worse to remove, but we're still going to, just because this is the game we play. It doesn't, we haven't lost that value forever, because we can buy these cards back once we resolve a season's past, right? So that's one thing that's great about this deck, is you can just kind of kill things on sight, and if you're executing your plan, you'll be able to recoup the value lost when you're, like, killing a cantripping creature like we have here. We have hit the 5th land, which is Temple of Malady, which is pretty cool. We see Kalitas on the top of the deck. Seems very good in our deck in general, against their deck in general, and I actually am happy enough to leave him on the top, because this lets us take a pretty cool line. We get to just Dark Petition for a land, ensuring that we hit our 6th land, and also because we had Spell Mastery, our Dark Ritual plus that land means we cast Kalitas. Sadly, the opponent has a Harness Lightning for it, then they go Glint Sleeve Siphoner. I'm just going to slow down because it's getting a little bit too quick for us here. But that was kind of a cool line, I thought, because you do need land number 6 to resolve Seasons Past. Almost always, if you don't need to do anything else, you want a Dark Petition for Seasons Past, because Seasons Past lets you buy back like 3, 4, or 5 cards in your graveyard, including Dark Petition, right? Again, the reason I didn't is because we have a second one in hand and we had a really good turn without it. But drawing an Ugin, not particularly good here, so now it's just time for Dark Petition. And once again, we get to have a nice mana-efficient turn. Vraska's Contempt, killing the Glint Sleeve Siphoner before they get value off of it. And, of course, we got our Seasons Past, and now we are buying back 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. Feels pretty good. Kalitas plus a bunch of removal and a tutor, basically. Seems alright. Opponent, meanwhile, is pretty darn flooded. We've drawn a Thoughtseize, pretty cool. The only card they have in hand is Glorybringer, the only spell, I should say. And so now we have all the luxury in the world to just Dark Petition again for Seasons Past. Once again, for the 3rd time in a row, we get to play a 4-mana spell after resolving a 5-mana tutor due to Spell Mastery and how our stuff's lining up, so that's pretty cool. And we're just flexing so hard right now. We're casting yet another Seasons Past, and opponent's sticking it out. We're just going to kill their thing, attack, and we have 7 cards after interacting this much. And opponent, to be fair, had flooded pretty significantly, just kind of already flooded and then drew more lands or attunes with Ether. So we were obviously happy to take advantage of that, but realistically, is a deck like theirs, keeping up with us after that first resolution of Seasons Past? I don't really think so. Our life total was so high, their best hope was probably to aggro us out and, tax our plays and, kind of try to cheese out the win there. They weren't really even close to doing so. So this was my first ever game played with Seasons Past, and that's kind of fitting because it was just a classic one as far as I can tell. We interact, we trade off resources. Sometimes it's optimal, sometimes it's a little bit less than optimal, but eventually we engineer a situation where we are looping Seasons Past and Dark Petition, and then it doesn't really matter how optimal our things were early on, it just matters that we kept even on tempo and kept our life total high and stayed in the game, because then we just absolutely bury them in the latter stages of the game. That's kind of how the deck works. Pretty cool stuff. So we're here in game 2 of this match against Energy. We can scry that Dark Petition to the bottom. We already have one, kind of need to draw lands in early interaction. So there's an Abrupt Decay. We're just going to decay their Mana Dork on sight. They make a Long Tusk Cub. And of course we could push it or decay it, but I'm just going to take the chance to play the Nissa, get our 4th land drop. Pretty cool stuff. We'll take the hit from Long Tusk Cub, although trading off there would not really be that bad. I still decided not to. So we drew a Thoughtseize for turn. Let's slow down there. We saw another Long Tusk Cub in hand, and a Glorybringer, and a Harness Lightning, and they had a Glint Sleeve Siphoner as well. So, interesting decision. We could, of course, say we'll take one of the lower curve things and hope they never draw lands number 4 and 5, but I think if if we were struggling to beat them either way, that might be an interesting line. But here I think we can beat the lower curve cards. I think we can beat a Harness Lightning and a Long Tusk Cub, and Scarab God is an incredibly scary threat, especially against us. So definitely pretty happy to take that. And of course we have to answer that Glint Sleeve before they get to untap with it as well. So back at it here. Cracking in with Nissa. We've got Abrupt Decay held up. They draw on a Tune with Ether, so there they go. They're hitting the land drops. Glad we didn't try to bank too hard on that. We'll decay a Long Tusk Cub, and they're going to play another. We're not hitting our land drops, but Vraska Golgari Queen, obviously pretty sweet here. Just decaying the Cub, you know, we're just playing like a more traditional mid-range game at this point. They Thoughtseize our Tracker, and they Lightning our Nissa. We hit the 5th land for Dark Petition, pretty cool stuff. I'm going to go get Seasons Past here, and they didn't Harness Lightning our Nissa. I went past that a little bit too quickly. We actually, I believe, ticked up with Vraska to cash in our Nissa. Kind of another cool line, right? Because normally, in a normal lower curve mid-range deck, Vraska is going to cash clues in really efficiently, maybe, or turn excess lands into gas. But here we kind of need to hit land drop number 6. So we cash in our Nissa, and that is going to allow us to, you know, see an extra card basically without having to lose a land. And we tutor for the Seasons Past, and then we're rewarded for it because we did draw land number 6, and we still get to see even more cards by floating and then buying back the land. So we tap it first, we sack it to draw a card, we then get to buy it back with Nissa. It's just incredible value. We have a full grip yet again, a very impactful Planeswalker on 5. Opponent spends some energy and takes care of her. That's totally fine. We're just looping Dark Petition into Seasons, making sure we get that again before they get any Grave Hate online, especially because we can still decay their board, right? We can still have efficient turns. It's probably interesting in a lot of places. You know, we don't need to go for max value. We don't need to go for max greed. You can, like, take a turn or two off of looping Petition and Seasons to really interact, but here it felt pretty safe. However, they drew another Thoughtseize. They take away Seasons. So that's kind of what they needed, I think, to maybe stay in this game. And we know their last card in hand is Harnessed Lightning, so we don't want to necessarily lose Nissa to it right away. We'll just play out the Rider for a little bit of pressure. Again, with the sheer top-end value of Seasons Past, we can afford not to extract maximum value from every single card, and this is a great example of that. So, anyway, opponent's got a Glint Sleeve. Great card. Gotta push it. Back to us, and it is Fabled Passage. So at this point, you know, again, we could keep slow rolling the Nissa. We'll try to draw out Harness Lightning first, but in the end, I do decide to just trade resources this way. You know, Rider continuing to connect is really good for us too, especially with our hand. So while, again, we could have waited for a more opportune moment, I think that's totally fine. And apparently it's good enough because the opponent will just scoop it up. So, again, kind of a classic Dark Seasons or Seasons Past, still don't know what we're going to call this deck, progression. We interact early, we take over the game late. Pretty awesome stuff. We've got enough proactiveness to close out the game too. So while a deck like the opponent's might not really be able to come back, there are other decks, maybe combo decks, that can come back. So it's important to have these proactive things like Tireless Tracker, Nissa Vast Woodseer, Murderous Rider that can put pressure on and can help close out the game before turn 20, right? So anyway, there we go. First of our 15 wins, and let's move on. Okay, friends, so I'm jumping us straight to game 2 of a match against White Weenie. So we know what we're up against. Keeping a 2-lander is almost a little bit sketchy here, but we do have lots of good low-curve interactions, so it's fine. But of course, we do need to hit lands 4, 5, and eventually 6, right? And I'm skipping game 1 because we've got too many matches to show you non-games, and it was a total non-game. So we are again against White Weenie. And opponent plays Arashan Cleric, which is not a very tempting thing to remove, so we just don't. And we miss a land drop. Pretty bad stuff, but we're drawing more removal. I've got Liliana's Triumph here in post side. And the opponent's got yet another ETB thing that I'm not really thrilled about killing. So In the face of all of our spot removal, it's a pretty good start from the opponent. And I go ahead and go Liliana's Triumph. And we're just drawing more spot removal. Like, it's good and it's bad at the same time, right? Opponent's got Gideon of the Trials. We are just going to kill that with Abrupt Decay. That's much more of a problem than this 2-2. And we do hit our third land. Pretty nice. So now we're in a spot where we can maybe consider setting up for a Cry. But in game one, we saw they had lots of Gideons. They had multiple Gideons of the Trials, and they had Gideon ally of Zendikar. So I was kind of just saying, let's push this thing before it does any damage, because if they just have more creatures to play, it's still a fine thing to have done. We can still 2-for-1 them with Cry. But if they play Gideon ally of Zendikar and they're going to try to beat us with a bunch of knights, then maybe we will wish we had pushed that before the damage came through, right? So that was my thinking anyway. Opponent's got another Charming Prince. They're just getting the scry value into Selfless Spirit. Normally this would be pretty good resilience against a sweeper, but of course Cry of the Carnarium with -2/-2, we still get to 2-for-1 them. Feels pretty good. So opponent's also got another Gideon Blackblade, Arashan Cleric, so they're just curving out like mad. But we do have Vraska's Contempt in hand. Temple of Malady, pretty perfect draw, because we get to do this and we get to scry. We see another Temple on top, pretty happy to leave that on top. That's the guaranteed 6th land, and it gives us value. Opponent plays a Lone Rider. Trying to slow down proceedings here just for a moment here. And Lone Rider is a real interesting one for those unfamiliar. First strike, lifelink. If you gain 3 life, so a nice synergy with Arashan Cleric, it flips to a very undercosted beater, basically. And now it's Dark Petition time, and we want to be sure to cast Dark Petition before Temple of Malady so we don't shuffle away our scry, right? So it's Dark Petition time. This has all come together pretty well for us. We have had our land drops in a reasonably timely fashion, despite missing them for a couple turns. And we are getting the Seasons Past engine online, and we're just using our mana super efficiently this turn, pushing everything, and forcing them to basically have like a Rest in Peace here they're going to lose. They don't have it. They have Giant Killer, so we instead just get to resolve Seasons Past, draw 5, 5 great cards coming back, and we're just going to main phase our stuff from now on because we don't need to play for little upsides. We just need to not get blown out. So once again, looping Dark Petition, Seasons Past. I used Cry of the Carnarium there to kill their one thing just to get another, get more diversity of CMC in our graveyard to make our next Seasons Past even better. Something to keep in mind while playing this deck. It's kind of counterintuitive from a more traditional value perspective, but that's why I did it. And again, we're just continuing to totally crush them. It feels really good. Opponent will scoop to this second Seasons Past because there's just no way they can come back from this. Again, their type of deck cannot come back from this. Simply can't be done. There's just no possible way. So, like I said, game one was kind of a non-game. I don't remember exactly what happened, but not really worth showing. And there were a few non-games in here. There was even one that I counted as a win where the opponent just mulliganed and then left the match to my turn 1 Thoughtseize. So not every single one of these 15 wins was a epic game against a tiered deck with a skilled opponent. Not saying that, but most of them were. And, this was an interesting game anyway within a broader match that we don't need to see the whole thing of. So there we go, taking down White Weenie. And next up, we are winning the die roll here. This is a blind game 1. It's a pretty solid keep in a blind. It's only a 2-lander. And we're going to go turn 1 Thoughtseize, and we see that we are against mono red. I'm calling it burn, I guess. Skullcrack, Lightning Strike. It's not as much of a prowess deck or a go wide aggro deck. Looks basically like burn, right? And we at least see that they're mono red for now. So I decided to take Bomat Courier, just because I don't want them to really ever get that online. It's also the haste threat. We're basically guaranteeing that they're going to play Soulscar Mage this upcoming turn, and we don't necessarily have the ability to kill something on curve the turn after this upcoming one, right? So, or we don't have the ability to do brutality on curve at least. But they draw another threat. I just spoke pretty incoherently there. Sorry about that. Let's just go back to speeding through the games, I guess. So there's their Soulscar Mage, and we draw our third land, Temple of Malady. We see a fourth land. We're going to put that on top because it's going to let us resolve Kalitas. And it was an interesting decision here to some degree, but I just took away Skullcrack because their hand can't really handle Kalitas. They're not really going to get, unless they're 2-for-1ing it, but they need to hit 2 more lands for it. Kalitas is just the bomb, so we just take away the Skullcrack, which does represent the best life swing from their perspective, and they just scoop to the Kalitas. They just simply can't beat it, given the fact that they're trapped on 1 land. So, again, we don't need to, we're kind of speeding through these games. We maybe didn't need to agonize over that turn 1 decision so much, but the point was that taking away threats is pretty good. You got to kind of get out of the modern mindset when you're playing a lot of these decks to a certain degree, because whether they're prowess or burn or aggro, they just tend to play a higher creature count than is common in modern. That's just what I've noticed glancing at lists. No Pioneer expert, but that's one reason we took Bomat Courier there. But anyway, we get him game 1. Let's move on to game 2. Alright, it's a pretty solid hand. We've got 3 lands, Kalitas, and some removal. It looks pretty great to me. Turn 1 Temple of Malady. I left Courser of Krufix on top. It's a really good card against the deck. Not much more to be said about it. However, opponent has a pretty nightmarish start with 3 1-drops right away. We just make our tapped land here, and it's Fatal Push time. So I pushed Bomat Courier here because, number 1, I don't want them to rebuild after we're setting ourselves up for the turn 3 Bantus. Don't want them to maybe have some dead cards in hand now and be able to hold up this effect and get a chance to rebuild. And number 2, I really want to price them into like casting a spell here. They're going to get their damage in. They're going to get the most prowess damage if they have it. But then again, we have the biggest blowout and they have the least chance of rebuilding after our Bantus. So that's my idea here anyway. So we just push the Courier. We could have saved like 1 more damage if we'd pushed something else and they were going to wild slash us anyway, but that's kind of my thinking. And of course, 3-for-1 with Bantus, pretty awesome. Opponent having an Eidolon, a little bit scary just because it's Eidolon and we're already at 7 and it gets to attack. But this is another reason why Kalitas is amazing, because we get to play it, it doesn't trigger Eidolon, and now the opponent has a big, big problem. They've only got 1 card left in hand. They have to be able to kill us basically before we connect, because if we connect with Kalitas, I think it's kind of over. Unfortunately for us, they've got Lightning Strike, and yes, Boros Charm is in fact Pioneer legal, and we take Xaxes right before we were able to stabilize. Look how amazing our hand is. They got us, so, our opponents... It's not like we're just winning these games because the opponents are drawing poorly. Look how great our opponent's curve out was. 4 1-drop creatures, hitting every land drop on curve, plus a 1-mana spell for the prowess turn, followed up by an Eidolon into exactly lethal. So definitely can't really say that was a weak draw. And nevertheless, we were pretty competitive despite that, despite being on the draw. But we've still got game 3. We're going to take the play. Let's see what we got. So Boros Burn has been confirmed. We're on the play against them, and it's a decent hand. It's definitely not as good as our hand last time, but we see that Courser on top again. Courser loves to be on the top of our deck, and it's a solid enough hand to keep. I like Golgari Charm here because it can kill Eidolon. It can kill... What's it called? Can kill the 1-1 Bomat Courier. And it also, the regen mode can be relevant against prowess and burn spells and stuff. And the debuff might be relevant as well. So, Golgari Charm, not very good against Swifty, but definitely better than a lot of cards that were in our main deck. Good enough to come in. Opponent's got a great turn. They get to Wild Slash us and then light up the stage. A classic prowess turn, but they light up into 2 Skullcracks, which are actually extremely awkward right now. Not going to be able to get max value out of them for sure. And we're going to go Courser. Courser is a pretty good blocker here, and obviously going to be even better if it lives. Opponent will Skullcrack us, and then they have free attacks because we don't kill them with blocks, so they get to push 2 damage through here. But then we get to live the value dream. We go Tracker into land, gain a life, make a clue, and we're just staying back. We're just staying back, man, trying to not die until our stuff can take over. To that end, also because we still have not drawn any removal, I went for the double block here, because pretty much in this format, as far as I can tell, no matter what they have, unless they have absolute perfection, with just a couple cards in hand. Now, granted, it's a little bit risky with Soulscar Mage involved, but I decided to make him have it. I think we needed to engineer a kill here, right? And so we'll see what the opponent's got, and it is just a Boros Charm. You know, they could have given Double Strike. That might have been interesting, but instead they're going upstairs trying to force damage through. And then the opponent also did not assign damage correctly here. They could have killed the Tracker, but instead they just damaged the Courser, so obviously that's pretty great for us. And we do draw that Assassin's Trophy. Gaining the life, making the clue, doing a little bit of everything. And then we're going to play the Skoos out. We've got Vraska Golgari Queen on top, opponent totally out of cards. They are just going to scoop to that. They know we've got a trophy in hand as well. We have so much recursive advantage. It is unbelievable. Skoos getting bigger, gaining life. Vraska controlling the board and gaining life. Courser potentially getting card advantage with lands off the top and gaining life. Tracker getting card advantage. It's just incredible. So we do stabilize right at the end there. I don't know if the opponent had taken a different line that turn they Boros Charmed us. Maybe it would have been a little bit sketchier, but I think we'd at least be alive to drop the Skoos, and then they'd have to top deck really well to beat us probably. But anyway, we're able to hang with some really good burn curve outs as well. Notice how in these 3 matches, this Dark Seasons deck basically played out like a normal green-black rock deck. Despite the let's disregard the presence of Ugin right now, because I have not liked Ugin. I think I'm going to cut him. And maybe even disregarding Vraska Relic Seeker, I'm more on the fence about her. If you leave out those top-end cards, it is basically just a rock deck with 1 Seasons Past and 3 Dark Petition. So if that top end gets online, it crushes, absolutely crushes other fair decks and other decks that haven't managed to do their linear thing in order to overcome us with it. But they're only 4 cards. That's the beauty of it. Like, we played through all of these 3 games basically not really seeing or needing to see Dark Petition and Seasons Past so much. We are, especially post-side against Burn, a lot more like a straight-up green-black rock deck, and we are pretty well positioned against decks like this by virtue of all the things I just mentioned, all of the recursive value, the natural life gain, the painless mana. We've got that going on for us too, so you gotta love it. Let's move on to the next round. Okay, my friends, next up, we've got a double Thoughtseize hand, and we are on the draw against a turn 1 Forest into Hardened Scales. So, definitely a real archetype, a real deck in the format. And, of course, we couldn't see Thoughtseize turn 1 with Fabled Passage and Woodland Cemetery, so that's kind of a rare thing, but our lands are holding us back a little bit here. And we see the opponent has turn 1 main deck Shaper Sanctuary and a creature. So all of these things together, opponent keeping 7, them being on the play with turn 1 Scales, them having main deck Sanctuary and a really good curve out, and us unable to Thoughtseize on curve, definitely just putting it out there that this is kind of a lot of things going awry already. So we Thoughtseize and we see Sparring Construct number 2, a Steel Overseer, and a Mystic Forge. So Mystic Forge is an extremely value-oriented piece that can definitely outgrind us in the late game, but they are a couple turns away from resolving it. A couple land drops, that is, not necessarily just a couple turns. So I made the executive decision to just leave it, because with Shaper Sanctuary around, there are not really good incentives to interact with their board, sadly enough. Very, very good card against us, so we just leave Mystic Forge in hand and try to not let them get 2 creatures online. They find animation module, and to that end, I do just play Murderous Rider because, again, we don't have the incentive to kill their things and target their things, and we do have the incentive to put a lifelinker on the field. So that's what we're doing. Opponent finds a Blast Zone. They're going to put a counter on it, taking it up, hitting us back with their 1/1, and then they find another Hardened Scales, and we draw Thoughtseize. So it's a really, really kind of weird game right now where they have all the setup cards, but we've managed to keep the payoffs at bay, and we're just not drawing our 4th land, and we can't really use our removal efficiently. So a really interesting game. Vraska Golgari Queen just waiting to come down. Opponent finds a Steel Overseer, so that's one that I do feel like we have to answer. So just to be mana efficient, we will push it on the end step. They do get the draw of Sanctuary, but can't really avoid that. We draw Courser of Krufix. This is actually a pretty good draw. Normally against Hardened Scales, you think just it's dirtily and you just want removal, but again, under these circumstances, it makes a lot of sense, and it lets us find our 4th land drop, so that's pretty great. We draw Fatal Push, and we're going to attack. So we're staring down a Blast Zone that can go to 3. We get our damage through, and then it's Vraska Golgari Queen time, and because we are staring down the Blast Zone, I actually go ahead and tick up, and that we cash in our Rider to do so. Rider goes back on the bottom of the library, and that unleashes, that lets us draw a card. Unleashes, yeah, it unleashes a card into our hand, lets us draw a card, and we found a land off the top of the deck with Courser. So Vraska has so many nice, neat little synergies with so many cards in this deck. That was a great example of this. So again, Blast Zone we already knew was going to 3, so we got some value out of it before it blew our stuff up. Pretty cool line if you ask me. So we draw Sign in Blood. We're smacking him with Courser. I guess we're just going to slow this game down. Too much going on for me to speed through it. Smack him with Courser. We have also ticked down with Vraska to take care of Shaper's Sanctuary. That was another reason Vraska was looking really, really great here. And we then have Dark Petition with Spell Mastery. So we just go for the Seasons Past into Sign in Blood, drawing another 2, getting yet more set up with the Courser, land off the top. It's all pretty great stuff, not going to lie. And then we just pretty happy to Fatal Push there while they don't have anything to put the trigger on. On top of all of this, the opponent is then priced to go all the way up to 4 with Blast Zone. Still can't afford to answer our Courser because they've got to answer Vraska. They find another animation module. So admittedly, again, a lot of the setup, not as many payoffs. And they trade Blast Zone for Vraska. But we have been doing our thing in the meantime. We already have 7 cards. And then just to flex, basically, we cast a Seasons Past. It might have even been better to do something else like cast Vraska Relic Seeker here. But, we didn't come here to not cast Seasons Past, right? So we've got like a million cards in hand. Opponent's sticking it out for some reason. But then they take their draw step, they scoop it up. And then, again, because it's the lobby, and not every round was a full match, or not every match was a full 2 to 3 games. The opponent did just leave after this one, so we don't see a sideboarded game here. But you can tell how we've got a lot of game against Hardened Scales. Traditionally, Hardened Scales in Modern, and I'm sure to some degree in Pioneer, is the number 1 priority discard and removal target. But you can also see how if they have too many of these setup cards and not enough threats that can stick, it can be better to just continually remove their threats, remove them one at a time so they don't get the synergies of death triggers putting counters onto other threats, and we can really stay ahead of them that way and really stop them from doing much of anything. So even though they had a really scary curve out, we just kind of really easily kept pace with them, and again, at the end, didn't even need to do Seasons Past right away. We could have done other things, and it maybe would have been just as efficient, if not more so overall. But either way, pretty cool, pretty dominant win over Hardened Scales Affinity. Alright guys, chugging along, showing you some games. This Ugin looking awkward in the opening hands, which is one reason I didn't really like it. Otherwise, a pretty solid hand if they're playing to the board. We'll bottom that Assassin's Trophy. We have more than enough removal. And they play Sylvan Caryatid. So we'll draw a Thoughtseize, but I kind of like playing Nissa here. They've got a full grip. We'll have good Thoughtseize targets next turn, right? So we'll just make our Nissa, have a mana-efficient turn, make the 4th land drop. And they're going to decay the Nissa, which does mean that Languish is now even better. But with only Caryatid on board, didn't think it was necessary. So instead, we'll cast that Thoughtseize. We see Ronus the Indomitable and Courser of Kruphix. Well, that's a pretty easy decision of Ronus because Courser, good as it is, good as it's been for us, it's going to die to the Languish next turn, so that's going to be our plan. And sure enough, they go Courser, gain their life. They've got a Fatal Push on top that we'll know about, but then they also showed us a land that we didn't know about, so we know their entire hand, and we Languish their entire board. We're making land drops, and I'm not going to risk Hissing Quagmire for a little while because we do want to try to get to 8 land drops for Ugin. We've got all 3 Quagmires, and in a value-oriented matchup like this, that's very good. Opponent with a Siege Rhino off the top. And then it's back to us, and we draw Kalitas. Pretty good. Would have preferred the 8th untapped land for Ugin. We'll draw Step the Trophy. It's unlikely that we'll basic screw them, so maybe we should have upkept it. Either way, they answer back with a Fatal Push. And now we've got so much removal that, and plus the presence of the zombie, we have more incentives to risk a Quagmire by firing it up. So we're starting to race. Opponent with a top deck that's incredibly good of Duskwatch Recruiter finds a Knight of Autumn, finds a Bygone Bishop, so that's a nice 3-for-1 for them. They're clawing their way back in. But we're still drawing to the 8th land for Ugin. In the meantime, we'll push. And since we still don't hit it, we just go back to racing. Good news is we've got a ton of value anyway. So opponent will lead on Bygone Bishop. They'll go into the Caryatid. We'll trophy in response so they don't get any more clues than they will already be getting. Nice little back and forth in this. We're against some kind of Absent mid-range deck, basically. And they'll crack a clue. And they find another Siege Rhino. So opponent really putting some good stuff together. We're looking for the Ugin mana. We don't get it, so instead we'll just Bantu's away that board. Our life total is pretty low, so we've got to respect that. Opponent goes Dryad, Militant, and pass. We draw the 8th land, but of course our lands don't untap yet, so still no Ugin for us. We'll push the Arbor, or the Militant rather. Again, respecting our life total. Opponent finally priced into playing out the Knight of Autumn. They've been slow rolling, and we top deck Seasons Past. So obviously playing Ugin there is pretty good. But I think I would rather draw 5 with a Seasons Past and then still be able to kill their Knight of Autumn. Might as well not show them Ugin quite yet unless we have to. And to that end, we're going to do other things besides playing Ugin, which again would be fine here. But we'll go Nissa. We'll make a land. We'll flip Nissa. We'll make a 4/4 Elemental. We'll replay the Kalitas we bought back, and we've still got Trophy for the Rhino. Could main phase it again, or we could wait to do it right now. It doesn't usually matter much, especially in Game 1s, especially now that Veil of Summer is out of the format, so we are just doing everything here. We make a zombie, we get a more card advantage off of Nissa, we play Vraska, and I think we made a Pirate here. Replay going a little bit wonky, shows us missing the activation. Nissa flipping another card, we get more value. Okay, yeah, replay going haywire. It shows us activating a tapped Quagmire and then skipping the attack step, but the opponent scoops. Obviously, that's not what happened, but what did happen is I believe we just made a couple Pirates with Vraska. And yeah, we were activating Quagmire, turning it sideways, getting advantage with Nissa, and I don't think the opponent had much. Certainly nothing we couldn't handle. With Ugin, Fatal Push, Vraska's Contempt, Mastermind's Acquisition all in hand. Just look at this deck, guys. Just look at what this deck does in terms of value. We are against Absent Midrange. We're against another... They're a little more hate-berry than maybe the Absent Midrange list I was looking at with like Dryad Militant and main deck Knight of Autumn. But... I mean, they're a value deck, they're a grindy deck, and look at our board state. It is awesome. So that was a pretty fun one, and let's go on. Got a fine hand here on the draw, plenty of value to be had. Assassin's Trophy on the top. We scry that one to the bottom. We have a lot of interaction. We basically just want to hit land drops. Instead, we draw a Decay. Dryad Militant coming across. I'm going to hold my push until we see what else they've got, but Ronus the Indomitable. When Ronus is involved, we want to keep the board as clear as possible. So on the end step, we do go ahead and push Dryad Militant. And then we're just passing. Holding up Abrupt Decay, we do have the 4th land drop in hand. Opponent's got a Siege Rhino, so that's a little annoying because not only is it very good, this is just a great turn for the opponent. They Helix us, they turn on Ronus, who hits us for 5, and our Abrupt Decay could not take care of anything this turn, so we had a very mana inefficient turn. Feels bad. So we are curving out with our lands, that's pretty good. The only thing we can do here besides Bantu's Last Reckoning, which isn't very good, is Vraska's Contempt, which is very good. So we're going to let them move to their turn, and then it's a judgment call as to whether to Contempt Ronus or Siege Rhino. The obvious upside to hitting Siege Rhino is that in theory, the opponent could have no other creatures or only creatures we can kill, and then Ronus stays dead, and also they don't get to attack this turn. But the upside to hitting Ronus is that this exile is basically the only way we can actually answer it, right? So lots of other things we play kill Siege Rhino, including this Bantu. So judgment call, I did decide to err on the side of Vraska's Contempt, hitting Ronus the Indomitable. So that's what we did. So we do take 4, but we gain 2. And we're max punished because they have another one in hand. Pretty rough, pretty bad. We draw Garruk Apex Predator. Awesome card, but we're a little bit far away from it. And once again, our Abrupt Decay is falling a little bit short for kind of the first time in this league, not able to handle the 4 drops. So we're priced into the Bantus and hope the opponent doesn't really have much else going on, and they don't, but Bantus basically time walking us here. And the opponent finds a Dryad Militant. They're going to try to pump the Militant so that Ronus becomes active, but we, of course, just get to decay and keep the Ronus stranded. And then we hit another land, so we get to have an amazing value turn. Tracker into land drop, making a clue, into Nissa, tutoring for another land, just all kinds of value here. And we're going to be able to flip Nissa next turn and play Garruk Apex Predator, maybe. But unfortunately, they have another Siege Rhino, the 3rd one of the game, I believe, or maybe just the 2nd one. Either way, it puts us to exactly 5 and forces us to chump with something. I chose to chump with Nissa instead of Tracker. Could have gone either way. But in any case, it is time for the Apex Predator to show his face. This guy is just so cool. We got the ability to tick up to destroy a Planeswalker, tick up to make a 3/3 Death Touch, tick down to destroy something and gain life equal to its toughness, and a very, very powerful game-ending ultimate as well. So I did choose to kill the Rhino, gain 5 life, seems pretty good. They're all the way up at 20, so sitting back with Tracker, even though we might not chump anyway, seems like a pretty fine concession to make, depending on, who knows what they could really have. Well, this is what they have. They have a Conclave Tribunal, exiling Garruk, and then a Declaration in Stone, exiling Tireless Tracker. But because we're very good at the game, we immediately top deck another Tracker, and we have a land as well. Feels great. I chose to hold up my clues rather than play Kalitas, and a little bit of a non-Bowie thing on the opponent's side with Archangel of Thune. Solid card, but does not turn on Ronus, and uses up so much mana that it can't be pumped either. So we get a little bit of a window here of opportunity. We crack clues finding Dark Petition, Hero's Downfall, Fatal Push. Yeah, this is everything we need. So let's kick it off with a Petition for Seasons Past. Use our Dark Ritual mana to kill the Archangel. And to be fair, turn on the opponent's Fatal Push that way. Fair enough, that was their last card in hand. Sylvan Caryatid a little bit scary simply because it's hexproof, and they can pump it with Ronus, and we can't really do anything about either of these with most of our kill spells. However, they didn't quite have enough mana to activate Ronus this turn, so again, little bit of a window of a reprieve here. And we top deck Vraska Relic Seeker, seems pretty good to me. We get to tick her down, make a treasure token, destroy Conclave Tribunal, and then Garruk cannot destroy either one of these, so instead we just tick up to make a beast, but getting him back is obviously a pretty big game. Still holding up Fatal Push or Clue, Actually, both if we want to with that treasure, right? So opponent going for the pump here, which again, we can't really stop, but we can just chump it for days. So with our free tokens we tick up to make, that's our short-term plan anyway. And the opponent just drew a land for turn. Pretty good for us, right? Pretty good for us, so we crack a clue. Find Hissing Quagmire, Mastermind's Acquisition. We've got lots of really good lines open to us here, but you can't really go wrong with a Seasons Past, and the opponent indeed will just scoop to it because we've got Vraska taking up, Garrick taking up. Now we're making 2 blockers per turn, and we're about to draw a billion and do whatever we want. So obviously, pretty sweet stuff. Once again, burying a deck in the past, burying them in the darkest season. You've got to love it. Pretty serious victories here over Abs and mid-range. And yeah, let's look at another game. So we're checking out the next round, guys. And again, we've got a fairly balanced hand. Opponent leading on Elvish Mystic. Looks like a pretty good Fatal Push target to me. Opponent with Castle Garenbrig, but no follow-up, and we will Thoughtseize into Hissing Quagmire. So let's slow down and take a look at that Thoughtseize. We saw 2 more lands, 2 copies of Galta Primal Hunger, who is obviously gated by them having a board state, which they do not. So the obvious take with Thoughtseize was Surak the Huntcaller, who not only is their earlier and more proactive play, but also will eventually help unlock the Galtas in their hand. And they will play Westvale Abbey. Pass back to us, Courser of Krufix, great draw. I think this is a card that I added as well. I don't remember seeing this in many lists. I don't think it was in the 5-0, but I might be getting that mixed up with other lists. Thought I'd test it, and it has not disappointed me. It was incredible in this run of 15 matches. So just helping us churn through the deck, a good proactive board presence. Opponent with a Steel Leaf Champion, no big deal. We get to play a land off the top of the deck, so instant card advantage and life gain from Courser against the Stompy deck seems good. And we just take care of Steel Leaf main phase so that we can attack. Back to the opponent, Castle Garenbrig for 6, which is neat in conjunction with this card and other mana sinks, Shifting Ceratops. So even though you don't need 6 to cast it, you can get some extra temporary buffs out of it. And that's exactly what they'll do. Adding haste, adding trample as well. But then either clicking through the attack or just deciding not to. In any case, Fabled Passage, Fatal Push. We've got Seasons Past on the top of our library. Seems pretty good. Let's just fire up the old Quagmire and attack. We've got Seasons Past online next turn, and the opponent main deck in a Stompy deck is not going to have anything to say about it. They've got another Ceratops. This time they will attack, giving it haste, and that's all well and good, but it's Seasons Past time, baby. We got... we chose not to do that. Okay, so I actually think that was correct. I just saw Seasons Past and assumed we were going to cast it, but instead, this is what we did. So we want to remember keep their board as clear as possible. Number 1, because we're racing. Number 2, because they're a Stompy deck, they can race us harder than you'd expect out of nowhere. And number 3, because those Galtas are in hand, we've got to keep the board clear so they can never cast a Galta. That's our goal. So to that end, we also had the luxury of using Dark Petition to go get a removal spell because we don't need to get Seasons Past. We naturally drew it. On top of all of that, we got to have a super mana efficient turn. We got to do 8 mana worth of stuff, basically. And we got to continue diversifying our graveyard for a Seasons Past next turn. So that's why we took that line. Opponent has Ronus the Indomitable, and that's all well and good, but now's our time to Seasons Past. Drawing 5, no big deal. Including a land, and the land allows us to Thoughtseize away one of the Galtas here, and that's what we'll do. And Ronus can't block, so we're smacking him for 2. Courser threatening to go all the way here. Opponent top decks a land, and opponent is able to then jam Galta. Looks a little bit scary on paper, and it does turn on Ronus, but we just resolved a Seasons Past, so we've got all kinds of answers to it. And we will just go ahead, take care of Galta. With Hero's Downfall, we're passing, holding up all kinds of stuff. We can kill almost anything that they could play that would turn on Ronus this turn, and the opponent has just seen enough. They drew another land, and that's going to do it. So a lot of good disruption. In theory, a deck like theirs with a lot of these like really big payoffs, I could see like the wrong half of the deck problem being a pretty big problem for traditional mid-range. But here, because we are committed to a more control plan, we don't have as much of a wrong half of the deck problem, and our top end can actually go over the top of their top end, which may not be true for regular Rock or regular Abzan, for example. So good times. Let's check out the next game. Alright, it's another solid hand. That's the one thing I will say. We took pretty few mulligans and we had a lot of really solid keeps, and this is no exception. So turn 1, push the Llanowar Elf, a familiar story. We love to do it. We love to see it. Abrupt Decay. This was a fateful decision, if I'm remembering correctly. So we saw Decay on top, and I'm thinking, okay, I can answer their small stuff with a Languish. So I'm thinking, why don't we try to find our combo? Why don't we try to keep digging for Seasons Past or Dark Petition, or find some other recursive value like Tracker or a Planeswalker? And, even if Languish by itself can't beat a bunch of small stuff, Murderous Rider can as well. So I didn't think we needed the Abrupt Decay. But it proved to be a fateful decision. Yeah, that's right, because opponent has Life Crafter's Bestiary. This is a card, when I was new to Modern, I remember it coming out, and I tried it in Elves. Modern Elves were my deck at the time. 3 mana, upkeep scry 1, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay green if you do draw a card. This would be a Prime Decay target, because it's just going to get them infinite value almost, but we don't have Decay, and we just drew a land, so we're pretty punished for it. Let's see if we can hang. Opponent goes Yorvo, Lord of Garenbrig, and they get to draw off of it, so like everything they're doing is a cantrip now. So because they're on such high value with the Bestiary, even though there is an incentive to Languish there, or maybe to pass holding up Swift End, I decided to play Kalitas, because if we're going to keep up with the Bestiary value, every turn scrying, every time they cast a creature, mostly they'll cantrip. We gotta get the big value engine of our own, so I did decide to take the higher risk, high reward line of playing Kalitas. Opponent will play a Shifting Ceratops, so pretty amazing turn for the opponent. They get 6 mana off of Garenbrig, which means they get to play this and cantrip off Bestiary and give the Ceratops haste, also buffing Yorvo, an incredibly powerful turn for the opponent, and they just attack us for 10 and we just kinda have to take it. Pretty rough stuff. We draw Dark Petition. It could be good, but for now, of course, we just play a Tomb tapped, and we're holding up Swift End. And now it's time to cast it. We're going to go for Yorvo. We get a zombie. I'm not pricing myself into the chump block just yet. We'd rather go to 6. Partially because, they might have something scarier, but more importantly because we want to engineer a situation where Kalitas survives a Languish. That's how we are going to win this game, if we are. So opponent continuing the value chain, Steel Leaf Champion, cantripping back to us, and it's just a land, so Kalitas time. When they don't block, we are going on that plan. We are going to get the lifelink while we can. We hardcast the Murderous Rider, and we are now just trying to stay alive this turn until we can Languish. That's the plan. So hopefully the opponent doesn't have anything too crazy. Wouldn't you know it, they have the Great Henge. It's a mana rock, like a soul ring that gains life, basically, for green. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, it gets a counter, and you draw a card. So between that and Bestiary, their dorks are becoming more respectable and drawing them 2 cards. Very, very nuts in terms of value from the opponent. And again, I wonder, on a more traditional mid-range deck, if we could keep up with this combination of aggressive stance and value. But you know what? If we've got Kalitas on our side, maybe we can do anything. I don't know if you just saw that. I don't know if you just took in the majesty of that, but we just wiped their entire board and survived it and made 4 zombies, and then ate a zombie main phase to get a little bit more lifelink and damage in this turn. What a turn. What a setup with Kalitas and Languish. Name a more iconic duo? I don't know if you can. Not in Pioneer anyway, so Opponent, still not out of it yet. They've got Surak drawing 2. They've got still more mana from the Great Henge if they need it. Steel Leaf Champion, so again, under many circumstances, we would just be buried by this value and this board presence. But maybe Kalitas can still win the day for us after all. We do have a lot of mana, Dark Petition in hand. Opponent just going off, though. And they get haste, and they choose to attack with this. I'm pretty happy to triple block here, take that trade. Feels great to me. And then we get to go Dark Petition. You could obviously have gotten a number of different things here. I did opt for Vraska Golgari Queen, which is kind of the most value-oriented card that I could get that also kills Steel Leaf Champion. And then, of course, we have Trophy for the Great Henge as well. So let's attack here. Pressing the opponent into the chump block, we gain 7. And then before we get too much further, it is Trophy time, taking care of the Great Henge. So opponent has done a lot, and they still have a full grip, but we have turned the tables on them pretty significantly. And even though they've got a lot of other things to do, it doesn't look like they can answer our Kalitas. And that is just going to basically end the game. So how many times can I, in how many different ways can we sing the praises of this season's past deck? Just feels like whatever the opponent's up to, it really feels like we're in with a chance. If they're a combo deck, we play Thought Seizes and Duresses out of the side, and we do have some semblance of a proactive clock. If they're a control deck or a mid-range deck, or even an aggressive deck with a huge top end like this, our top end is probably better, as long as they're not disrupting our loop. Our top end has got to be better. And then if they're a lower curve aggro deck or something else more synergistic and quick, well, the vast majority of our deck is BG Rock, which is good against those types of decks anyway, inherently. So anyway, that was another win in this awesome run, this awesome debut run. Let's check out yet another match. And here we go, checking out another match on the play with a borderline hand for sure, but one that I did decide to keep, and we see that the opponent is on a mono-red aggro deck. So I chose to take the top end of Boros Reckoner, kind of the strongest card overall. There's an argument for taking something lower curve, but with our hand the way it is, I'm just kind of hoping that we have to draw something that's a roadblock or we're just going to lose anyway. So if we assume that we draw a roadblock like a Courser of Krufix or something like this, then I think that's the best take with Thoughtseize. We drew Sign in Blood, so we're drawing all the painful cards. It's pretty bad news. I did feel priced into firing it off. We find Vraska, which is good, but maybe not good enough, and another Thoughtseize, and another Thoughtseize off the top. So we kind of got no choice but to fire off these Thoughtseizes. We're just going to lose to the beats otherwise. And we do get to clear out their hand pretty well, but look how wide their board is. It's pretty wide, pretty wide. However, Collective Brutality is a wonderful draw. We get to kill one of their Fanatical Firebrands before it gets to untap. We get to drain them, and we also are going to main phase Decay again before they untap. So, pretty cool stuff, and we might be in with a chance of stabilizing. So, we're at 5. And we draw a land, unfortunately, and then it's Vraska Golgari Queen time. So normally, obviously against these wide boards, it's pretty nice to take down if you can afford to. I don't think we can afford to, because we kill one of them, the other one kills us back, and the crackback kills her on the crackback, rather, and then from there it's just kind of a top deck war, but we're down at 5. So if the life totals were more even, I'd probably do that, but as it is, I think we need to play for the higher upside. And look, gaining a life is pretty good against 2 1/1s. So we do that. And unfortunately, we're just hitting another land, but at least we churn through the deck. And I think there's very few things they could have that really punish us here, but this is one of them. They have the third land plus the treasure token to make Torbrand, Thane of Redfell. Super cool card, not gonna lie. I think this guy's so cool. And that's exactly enough to make these 1/1s into 3/3s for all intents and purposes for the turn. So, we had a window, we had a decision. I think it was the right one. We kind of got punished for it, but really, if we had ticked down with Vraska, I guess we're not beating Torbrand either. So, either way, this was a This was an instance, actually, one of the few that we will see in this video of the wrong half of the deck problem. We're just against a mono red aggro deck and we draw 4 of our 5 life loss cards. Now, granted, we drew some life gain, too, in the form of Brutality and Vraska, but yeah, we're drawing Thought Seizes and Signs and Bloods against this deck. Not a recipe for success. So we've got the play here for Game 2 against Torbran Red, and we had to mulligan a hand with almost no action in it, a 7. It was functional, but again, too light on the gas. This is a pretty weak 6, too. Yeah, it's only got 2 spells. We bought him a land, and this is all we got. This is all we got. So Decay keeping us alive early. Dark Petition for the late game. What do we have for the mid game? Well, we draw a Tracker. That could be okay. And opponent plays an Ember Hauler, so a much less explosive start this time for them. Very happy to decay that before they untap. And yeah, we draw the 5th land. I guess that's okay. But right now, we're kind of at their mercy. But again, a less explosive start. Goblin Chain Whirler, sure. Like, Tracker doesn't block that very well, so there's that. But otherwise, don't really care much about it. So we make a clue off the Tracker. We're not going to chump. Certainly not yet. Opponent with Wily Goblin into Eidolon. So definitely a nice turn there as well. We draw another Tracker. Tracker into land for double clue is obviously pretty tempting, but I think it's a lot worse against Eidolon, so instead I'm going to crack a clue looking for more action. And otherwise, if I don't have it, just pretty content to get this up out of like lightning strike range and make it a really good blocker even against the 3/3 first strike. So we're just sitting behind the meat shield of Tracker, and that's working. Opponent plays Boros Reckoner, even taking 2 damage to do so. And then we get to go tutor up Languish with the Mastermind's Acquisition. So this is pretty spicy. And again, just main phasing this clue activation. Now we're up out of a 4 damage spell range, and the opponent is just about to walk into a Languish, and for some reason... Oh, sorry, it's not for some reason. They play Eidolon. It is, I was going to say they walk into the Languish, but they actually don't get to see what we get off Mastermind's Acquisition, so they're not playing around Languish, they're just going as wide as possible. That's one reason Masterminds is cool. It's also cool that we have, with this setup, we have 1 Languish main deck, 1 Languish side. So if this was even game 1, you could go get the Languish out of the sideboard so the other one is still in your deck, because you can get one from the sideboard or from the main deck. Pretty cool, but either way, this is one of the biggest blowouts. Languish has arguably been the all-star of this league. We don't get a million zombies off it because we have Tracker instead of Kalitas, but once again, just like in the Kalitas game, we have a permanent that accrues us a ton of value and then also survives our board wipe. It would be awesome enough if it was just a 5 for 2 if we lost our threat, but we don't even lose the threat. The threat sticks around, and the threat is just going to win the game, like, in 2 hits. Maybe 3 hits because it shrunk this turn, but, like, unbelievable blowouts here on the back of Languish, and Tracker doing a ton of work to stabilize us. You gotta love that. So, we get a win back here. Let's check out Game 3. Alright, I like this hand on the draw. Kill spell, kill spell, kill spell. And one of them's a 2-for-1 that makes a lifelinker. And on top of that, we have a Tracker for the mid-game value now. So that's a great hand. Note, though, that the opponent went double Leyline of Combustion to open the game. So as good as this hand is in the dark, it's actually a lot worse against these Leylines, because every time we target something, we're going to take 4 damage while these Leylines exist. So the nightmare would have been them having 1 fast 1 and 2 drops. But they don't. They have their land drops, they have the Leylines, but they don't have a fast start. That is our only saving grace, but these Leylines make our like all removal hand way, way worse. And that's still all we got. So back to the opponent here, they will play a Boros Reckoner. That's kind of a card that I think we have to kill. Who knows if they've got any kind of tricks and synergies with it, like damage-based sweepers, things like this. And in general, it's just like a 3/3 that can get first strike. It's tough for us to block efficiently on the draw. So that's why we do that. And not for the first time this league, we do choose to just opt out of half of the value of this card and just play it as a 2/3 lifelink. I think that's very much warranted here. So opponent goes Fanatic of Mogus. So that just ETB'd and dealt 5 to us, and it's also a 4/2. Pretty terrifying stuff. Definitely a way to reward these ley lines in other ways than their main role. So this is almost like a mono red devotion deck. Maybe that is indeed what it is. So here we have a couple interesting options. We could just Cry of the Carnarium to kill the Fanatic and pass, or we could attack first and see what they do. I opted to attack first and see what they do. I'm kind of happy if they block. I'm happier if they don't, because then we get our lifelink and our damage, plus we get to kill the Fanatic. But if they block, which they did, then we get to go Tracker into Fetch Land, which is pretty good. Opponent is flooded out, thankfully. Definitely would be tough, again, to keep up with a really low aggressive curve plus these ley lines while on the draw, but that's not what they've got. They've got a bunch of mountains. So we make 2 clues this turn, we crack one of them, and then we just crack another, once again leaning real hard on the Tireless Tracker here, smashing in for 5. Opponent finds a Chain Whirler, don't care about that really at all right now. But on the other hand, we do have them empty-handed. So let's crack a clue, see what we can find. And because they are empty-handed, and because if we sequence this way, we've got lethal next turn, that's exactly what we do. So we take the 4 to kill Chain Whirler, crack another clue, hit them for 7, and this turn we make another clue, and we are swinging for lethal. Seeing that, the opponent will go ahead and scoop it up. So Tireless Tracker. Not the first card that comes to mind when you're thinking of good cards against a mono-red aggro deck, but so many Pioneer decks do have a mid-range element to them because the format is pretty fair and it can be pretty grindy. So Tracker, again, as I said in the deck tech, I think, a card that is not in every Seasons Past list, a card that is sometimes, when it is seen in these lists, is seen in the sideboard. I decided to main deck it, and that is one thing that I think I'm very happy with. It's something I'm not going to revise at the end of this video, at least for now. I think Tracker main deck is a 2 of. Very, very nice. Certainly pulling more than... Alright guys, just a couple more games to show you from this debut run, and then we'll do some tweaks to the list here at the end. We got a 2-land keep, but everything in our hand is 1 and 2 mana interaction, so that's amazing. We are against another Hardened Scales deck. Their hand to our turn 1 Thoughtseize was Triple Forest, double Hardened Scales, Steel Leaf Champion, and Vivian Arcbow Ranger. So I think when we have the redundancy of double Scales plus the prospect of a Planeswalker, I think we just kind of have to take the Planeswalker, but you could see an argument, of course, for taking one of the Scales and decaying the other. That argument would be stronger if this was going to enter untapped, but it's not. So definitely an interesting call. But we took the Planeswalker. We draw Seasons Past, kind of a bad draw. Now we really need to hit like everything. We need to keep hitting interaction, and we need to hit a bunch of land drops, and we need a threat or recursive value engine. So Seasons Past, kind of a bad draw there. We were hitting the land drops at least, so there's that. So over to the opponent, and they're going to go Forest into Steel Leaf Champion. So here I decided to fetch for Revolt and then use a push. Slightly less mana efficient, but we want to leave our options open to decay and trophy these Hardened Scales. And there's another land drop, and it's a Temple of Malady, and we see a 5th land on top, which is just where we're going to leave it. So hey, we're hitting the land drops. We kind of needed to, right? Opponent got 3 cards in hand. They go Pelt Collector into Servant of the Scale. So some interesting things going on. Pelt Collector gets bigger when other creatures ETB or die, and Servant gets bigger, it transfers counters when it dies. So for those reasons, I decided, even though I wasn't sure what their last card was, to kill Pelt Collector in response to Servant. And then opponent's last card is Barkhide Troll. So I understand why they would cast it. It's proactive, it's efficient, it plays around discard, but at the same time, this is a card that we would really struggle to beat if they just waited a turn for another open mana. But as it is, they don't have the mana to give it hexproof, and therefore we're very happy to simply push it. Once again, we avoid the death trigger of Servant of the Scale, and we take care of the really sticky threat. So, amazing turn for us, really using our interaction to the max. There's land number 5. No reason to do anything quite yet with the trophy. Opponent's got another Pelt Collector, so now is the time where we trophy the Servant of the Scale, and the opponent's just seen enough. So this is another one of those where they left after game 1, no post-side games. I think there was one where it was a total non-game where they just mauled and scooped to our Thoughtseize in game 1. I think there were 2 or perhaps 3 other rounds where we only played game 1. The opponent didn't go to side. So we were more like 11 or maybe 12-0 in terms of playing a full best of 3. But there were still some games that are worth taking a quick glance at, like this one, even though there was no best of 3. It was only the best of 1. But you can again see against Hardened Scales how our removal is so flexible, and we have so much of it, and we have the ability to buy it all back once we get our engine online, that we can pivot into killing everything that moves, or into killing their Hardened Scales and other kind of backline payoff cards and making their threats underwhelming and outvalued and outclassed by our threats. Again, does a traditional mid-range deck have this luxury? Maybe, but not as often, right? So you saw it in action for the second time this league. We just kill everything that moves, and the Scales players, they don't even want to play a post-side game because they know it's going to get even worse post-side. So feels good. Let's take a look at the final match. Alright, I don't know, this is like the 8th match I've showed you guys, but it was the 15th one that I played. I was just, again, like I said at the beginning, I'm just going to play till I lose, and I just wasn't losing, so I'm like, alright, I'm either going to win the 15th one, or I'm going to lose. Either way, I'm going to be done for a while. So, opponent will duress away our Vraska on turn 1. We've got a nice value-oriented hand, and we draw land number 4. Bantu's Last Reckoning for Young Pyromancer was the play that I chose. I think that was a real 50-50 call, right? Because on the one hand, we can just sweep up all of the Pyromancer tokens with Bantu, so we weren't priced into doing it. And another reason not to do it is that we now don't get to have a turn 4 because our lands won't untap. On the other hand, they're main decking Duress, which leads me to believe that they're probably main decking Thoughtseize as well. So they probably have a lot of discard effects, and leaving the Bantus around and leaving the Bantus in hand, not killing the Young Pyro. If we lose that to a discard effect, it could be kind of disastrous. So I did choose to just basically time walk myself to trade 1 for 1. And the opponent has another Young Pyromancer, so we're pretty punished for that, especially when they go a 3rd Pyro into Sign in Blood. So an utterly insane value-oriented progression from the opponent. Pretty punishing, but we do have a pretty good line, once again, of Mastermind's Acquisition finding Languish. Now we're forcing the opponent to really have discard, and they don't, but they do get to swing for 10 off Castle Embereth, but then we Languish them. Once again, we go ahead, as I mentioned earlier, this time it's game 1, so we do it. We pull the Languish out of the sideboard with Mastermind's Acquisition, just so we have another one still in the deck. Like, it just makes our deck quality higher, basically. The opponent then goes Monastery Swiftspear. This card, obviously very good, one of the best creatures in Pioneer, but does seem a little bit incongruous with, like, the Duress Sign in Blood Young Pyro package, but, you know, hey, you do you. It's brew time in this format, for sure. We draw Thoughtseize, don't think we can afford to cast it, so we're just holding up Vraska's Contempt here. Unfortunately, opponent draws another Swifty, but we exile 1, we tread water with our life, and then it's Dark Petition time. Once again, we just Dark Petition for removal so we can cast it this turn, and because we have another Dark Petition in hand, we don't need to get Seasons Past right now. I missequenced here a little bit because it was the 15th match that I played on the same day. I played Temple first and then ruined my scry with Dark Petition. As I explained earlier, it should have been the other way around, but we go get Seasons Past, and the opponent just scoops to it. Like, seems like they've had a decent chance to maybe burn us out, but maybe they don't play burn. Maybe they don't really play many direct damage spells, which again makes me think Monastery is a little bit of a incongruous card in their deck. But anyway, they took their draw step, then they just scooped it up. So I'm sure they were just flooded. I'm sure they just feel they can't beat the Seasons Past. Still felt like they would have played it out a little bit more with us all the way down to 4, but again, maybe they don't have that much reach in the deck. Who knows? But either way, we were under a lot of pressure. We battled through a ton of value, and apparently the season's past loop is too much for the opponent to beat. And here we are having to mulligan a 1-land high curve hand in round 2. Opponent keeping 7 on the play. This is a fine 6 though. This is our keep. Opponent with that turn 1 Swifty. We go Temple of Malady. And we have drawn Duress. The opponent will Duress us right back. Abrupt Decay and Bantu's Last Reckoning both go down. Swifty hitting us. Pretty harsh stuff. So Duress goes back to the opponent. We see double Dreadbore and Sign in Blood. We take Sign in Blood, leave them with the reactive cards in hand, making their Swifty pretty poor. Then we'll trophy it on their turn. They showed us a land, so we know the exact contents of their hand, and it's just kind of draw go for a little while. Opponent has lost Legacy in against us. I think that's a little bit interesting. I don't know how to rate it, but it's certainly very good if they know the contents of our hand. So they get to trade that with a Dark Petition in our hand, plus get the other petitions out of our deck. We are just kind of flooding here. Basic checking them. It might be better to have saved that for Castle Embereth with my field, but anyway, we're kind of playing draw go. I've drawn a Kalitas, but I don't want to trade Kalitas with Dreadbore. So we're kind of waiting to find more expendable threats to trade with Dreadbore and or maybe discard to get Dreadbore out of their hand. We draw Scavenging Ooze. That's good enough for me to start taking action, so we run it out. They're going to Dreadbore it, and we're going to eat their entire graveyard in response as much as we can. So we'll gain a life, and we'll, play around any kind of graveyard synergies they might have, make them at least worse this way, right? So no real reason not to. One of the reasons I was happy to play the Skoos is because when you don't know, this could have gotten us some value, right? So, back to us. Okay, more draw go. We're filling up the hand with some action at least. And more draw go. And more draw go. Opponent with a Castle Embereth. We draw Collective Brutality. I kind of like it. We get to take the Dreadbore away, but they've drawn another one. So once again, we're priced into holding back Kalitas. Land drops and land drops on either side. I'm now sandbagging a land for the purposes of the usual suspect, Tireless Tracker. Opponent goes Sign in Blood into Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, buying back Sign in Blood. That was an utterly incredible turn from the opponent. Out of nowhere, they just had like a +4 card advantage turn. We'll decay the Chandra, and we will top deck a Season's Past. Pretty sweet if you ask me. So this is usually the point where we just win the game. We get to buy back a bunch of stuff, and we get to duress them. Take away a Dreadbore. But we see, my friends, an absolutely terrifying hand. They have another Sign in Blood, Young Pyromancer, Bedlam Reveler, and the Shock we knew about. So, hey, we have not fully buried them with the Season's Past because they have a really, really good hand as well. So they're going to lead on the Young Pyro into Sign in Blood, no surprise there. And then Legion's Warboss is the play, is one of the finds. So opponent going super wide here, and that's a little bit scary. They still have Bedlam Reveler in hand as well. So we're going to play Kalitas here. Or are we? If we can tap correctly, then we'll play Kalitas. And then it's time to try to kill something, get some value. But opponent has a Rakdos Charm, exiling all cards from our graveyard and making a token. Then, of course, that'll resolve. We get a token of our own. I chose to sandbag the Skoos rather than running it out into the Shock. Seems bad to do that. So we just say go. And opponent has found a Bedevil off the top. Ugh. Very rough. So they get to kill Kalitas and kill his token and totally empty their hand for Bedlam Reveler, draw another 3. So even though we resolved the Season's Past, things have completely spiraled out of control, and opponent just going absolutely insane right now, getting all the damage, all the value. But we top deck Mastermind's Acquisition, which is one of the most epic top decks imaginable. We go get a Languish, we wipe the entire board, we follow up with a Skoos, and now I'm just thinking that maybe, just maybe, against all odds I can stabilize, but the opponent has a very stylish kill on us. Rakdos Charm. Each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. Well, I guess our Skoos makes us take exactly lethal. So That, I mean, right here at the end of this 15-game debut, 15-round debut, what an epic Game 2 this was to take us to Game 3 of the 15th round. Just back and forth, the opponent with a crazy turn with Sign in Blood into Chandra into Sign in Blood, and then us just like going, okay, season's passed, can you beat this? Then opponent's hand just being absolutely nutty, nearly unbeatable, then us top-decking Mastermind's Acquisition, languishing their entire board, slamming a Scooz, and then we just die to a Rakdos Charm. What an intense back and forth roller coaster game. Very, very cool. So they get us, they take us to Game 3. And here it is, the last game you'll see, my friends. I hope you have enjoyed these. We got a mulligan again. We're taking a lot of mulligans here, but this is a pretty good 6. Push, Sign in Blood, Hero's Downfall. Unfortunately, opponent will duress away our draw 2. So all we're doing is just kind of making land drops, hoarding reactive cards in hand, and to be fair, that's a pretty fine thing to be up to in this matchup, I suppose. Opponent with another duress, taking away our sweeper. And shocking in Blood Crypt, but then passing. Once again, we just draw more reactive cards. And let's see what the opponent's got. Legion Warboss. Well, we'll decay that. Rather hold on to Downfall than decay, all else being equal. More draw go, you know? We're stacking up the removal. Look at all this stuff. It's just draw go. Opponent making the land drops, though, and we're not. So they finally take some action here with the Swifty, which will push. And then we hit a land drop. So this is good. We get to go tracker into land. Opponent, we're sure has removal. It is cast down. But we 2-for-1 there, and we're holding up a Fatal Push. Opponent will duress us, take away Hero's Downfall. And we draw yet another push. We'll crack a clue into Field of Ruin. More draw go. We'll tag that Castle Embereth while we have the free mana on their end step. And then we hit another land. This one will sandbag in case we draw another tracker. And look at that. Another tracker right off the top. So these trackers are kind of breaking the mirror in terms of the draw go, you know. They're able to answer it, but we 2-for-1 them every time. In this case, we 3-for-1 them because they were... A lot of people just like kill the tracker in response to the first trigger when you play a fetch land. It's not really correct to do that most of the time. Anyway, the opponent will just cast a main phase Rakdos Charm, exiling our graveyard, into Bedlam Reveler, pitching 2 more Rakdos Charms and a Dreadbore. So a very, very clunky kind of non-Bowie hand with the opponent having all these relatively conditional and or reactive cards alongside Reveler. Really like a lot of what the opponent's up to, but you know, there's an issue with Swift Spear and Reveler relative to their spells, it seems to me, to some degree anyway, but the opponent still gets to play a 3-4 with an Ancestral Recall attached to it, so it's not all bad, right? And step will crack some clues. We find our tutors, Dark Petition, and Mastermind's Acquisition. Million different lines we could have taken here, but I actually chose to go get Nissa with Mastermind's Acquisition. I thought that was kind of spicy. You know, it's just another 2-for-1. It's a way to keep competing on the value axis. I don't want to Bantu as just a Reveler yet, so I want to do something more proactive here. I don't really need to Dark Petition yet because I want Spell Mastery with it, and I won't have it because they charmed our graveyard. I also don't necessarily know that I want to get Seasons Past yet with it because we don't have a graveyard yet. So my thinking was, let's go get Nissa. If they can deal with her, it's a 2-for-1 that starts filling our graveyard back up. And if they cannot, well, then she's going to flip and she's going to be awesome. So that's exactly what happens here. And, you know, I could have actually shocked in the Overgrown Tomb to hold up push. It's kind of just a wild guess in the dark. I chose not to. Opponent with a Chandra just making the tokens, which is okay with me, rather than casting another spell. But we will decay the Chandra. And we have Dark Petitioned as well for that, and then we pass. Bantu's away that Reveler. Opponent will Sign in Blood into a Swifty, into a Pyro, so lots and lots of value. We're going to push the Swifty to save our life total because our life total is low, but then we are preferring to kill things with Kalitas on the board, all else being equal. So then we go to our turn, we play Kalitas, we push resolves, they don't have anything in response. They top deck another Pyromancer, and then they have a Dreadbore, so opponent answering Kalitas was necessary, but we get to push in response, so we've come away with 2 zombies. Then it's Vraska Golgari Queen right off the top. You gotta love that. And it's time to just start aggroing them out. We tick up, we don't find much, but we're getting a nice little cushion to our life total and getting our loyalty high. And we're putting the clock on the opponent, hitting for 6. Opponent has Castle Embereth, presumably another land in hand, and that is the scoop. So we could say that the opponent flooded out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But look at ours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we kind of flooded out too. Now, granted, Nissa tutored a land and all that, but the point is we have more mana sinks and a better top end. So if both people are flooding, we do have the advantage, all else being equal. I think that really manifested here. But in any case, my friends, that was the final game I'm going to show you. And even at the end of this run where I was just like, okay, we're probably going to finally lose one, we still pull it out of the fire in the end. We still pulled it out. So what can I say? This deck looks awesome. Looks absolutely awesome to me. I cannot wait to take it into a league, but first, let's make a couple changes to it. Alright guys, so, a big part of me would say let's just take this into a league as is, because our results literally couldn't be better in the playtesting, in the practice games, but the one thing that I do think I'm not sold on is the Ugin. I did see the Ugin in one of the lists, but it's kind of an alternate win condition, and I haven't looked back at the lists, but I believe the list that played Ugin main deck had the trackers on the side, and I'm all about the trackers, right? So I think that's a good enough alternate win condition. Ugin is just looks a little bit win more if you already have the trackers and the rest of this package in the deck to me. I sided it out almost every game. Not almost every time. It's definitely good in a lot of matchups, but I think we can do without it. So the first thing I want to do is cut the Ugin. Another thing I'm interested in doing that is not a like-for-like replacement is playing Damping Sphere. Just the fact that we're a Masterminds acquisition deck and the fact that we've got a lot of one-ofs, I see this in some sideboards and I opted against it because I just didn't know how many, I don't know why it's so laggy at this collection screen, sorry about that. I didn't know how good this is in the meta, really, but honestly, one of the matches that I played that I won that I didn't show you was against a Lotus Field combo deck. It's just kind of like turn one, game one, they went off forever and finally killed us, and the other two, they didn't go off, and we killed them, so it wasn't terribly interesting, but Damping Sphere is good against decks like that. It's good against presumably enough decks for me to want to play it, since we're on all these one-ofs. Arguel's Bloodfast is something that I don't know, I don't know if we want. I could see why it's pretty cool. Just another value piece when your life total doesn't matter, basically, but at the same time, it's kind of one of the iffier cards in here to me, so maybe we'll just do that, but as always, my friends, I'm interested in your feedback. Now, that's one change. We could make other changes to the side. I almost wouldn't mind a third Duress, honestly, for some of those matchups, but maybe 7 discard effects? Maybe a little bit too many, I'm not entirely sure. Another main deck card I'm not that sure about is Collective Brutality, just because, pitching excess lands is not something you want to do in this deck. On the other hand, it is yet another way to shore up the aggro matchups. Main deck, it's flexible, discard is live, the discard mode, and, maybe I'll just keep it because it's actually better to escalate with spells because we can buy them back with Seasons Pass, so maybe this is just good enough. On top of that, I don't really know what to put in over that Ugin. A big part of me wants to move the Scavenging Ooze main, and maybe that's what I'll do. But on the other hand, we've got Bantu's Last Reckoning and Languish main deck, so playing more creatures might be a little bit loose. So the alternative would be leave it in the side and actually just main deck both Languishes. This was arguably the MVP of this debut. I have no idea. I have no idea what's better, but these are things I'm considering. We do need to find or we could just leave both of these in the side and find a different card to play in the main deck. It could be another Planeswalker, do we want to play Liliana the Last Hope? I actually don't know that we do. I don't think her -2 is that good in this build, necessarily. It's cute with Seasons Pass like making Seasons Pass better, but I think that's a little bit win more. I think our creature density is too low to make that reliably good in the grind on her own. And I don't know how necessary she is just killing X1s. I don't think Nissa Vital Force is that good in the deck. I don't want other stuff that's vulnerable to graveyard hate. So, I mean, we could just like main deck a Garrick Cursed Huntsman as like a cheaper alternate win con, kind of like Ugin. That's something to consider. Or we could put one of these sideboard cards in the main, or we could do something else, like a Gaze of Granite main. Could be super interesting. I could even see playing like a, I don't know, finding some other 1-drop or finding some other 3-drop, something like this. We could main deck a Despise. I don't know. Let me know, guys, what you think. I want to make a couple tweaks to this before I take it in a league, and I will be watching your comments closely, responding to your comments as always, and I will be playing a league with this for you soon. My hype levels when I started playing this deck went through the roof for Pioneer. This is what I've been waiting for. I have been waiting for a lot of the cards I knew were going to get banned, and I've been waiting for a deck to really call my name. Both of these things have happened, and this is where we're at. I hope y'all are down for this. I hope you guys like the idea of Seasons Past. I think it's a super cool twist on the BG archetype, and I look forward to jamming it and continuing to iterate with it in the weeks and months to come. So, that will conclude our video. Like I said at the beginning, this was something different, something new, a window into my process of learning a new archetype from the ground up. Once again, we consulted with the friends, which is you. We consulted with everybody on the channel, got your feedback. A lot of you wanted to see this deck, so I went with it. We looked at 5-0 lists. We made some tweaks to it that are, you know, when I'm brand new, like I said, I defer to the people who have been playing it for longer and who have 5-0'd with it. But at the same time, I do bring my own fresh perspective. I am a very experienced deck builder in general, and sometimes a fresh pair of eyes can see things that people who have been playing an archetype for too long might not see. So I'm not afraid to make changes, but at the same time, I tend to make them conservatively. And that's exactly what we did here. And then, as you saw, I like to play some practice no-stakes games to get to know the deck if I have the time to do so, and we went on a really fun run doing exactly that. And then the final part of the process is tweaking and then taking up the competition a level, going into a league and seeing how it holds up. So that will come next, and I hope you will stick around the channel for that and for other modern content as always. So thank you so much to everybody supporting this channel, including Kook Zerg 23, our newest Patreon supporter, a confidant. Thank you and welcome, my friend. And if you do like this content, you want to keep me around, you want to keep me carving out time from my day to do this, Patreon is in the description below. That is the best way to do so. Otherwise, you can like, you can subscribe to the channel, you can comment, helps me in the algorithm, and you can share. Word of mouth is also how we grow. So thanks again, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Hope everybody out there has a wonderful day.